All right, well, today we're back to work on the C6 competition drift car build. We're just off the dyno with this thing. It did really well there. Made over 1,000 horsepower at 15 pounds of boost. It made 750 at 6.5 pounds of boost. It is even exceeded our expectations. We should never want for power in this thing. And everything seemed to work really well. All those systems seemed to work as they were intended to, which is great. I mean, that's a huge milestone because that's the first big stress test on the car. You know, getting it running and getting it driving is one thing, but you know, cranking down, putting down 1,000 horsepower on the dyno is a whole lot more stress. So it survived that, fortunately. So the next stress test is drifting it for the first time. And that's not only a test of its durability and making sure everything holds together, but the bigger, scarier test is, does everything work well? You know, how does the car feel with the weight balance? How is the angle kit? How is the electric power steering? What's it like to drive on these tires? You know, all of those things are what we're gonna figure out. Now, fortunately, we have a lot more tools in the toolbox with this car than we do with this car. There's a lot of things we can change. We have a lot of options, but I'm really anxious to see how that first drift drive feels, because that's gonna make, you know, that's what the car was meant for. The car is meant to compete. It needs to drive well. It needs to be nice to drive and consistent and all of those things. So that's really if we can get through that clean and the car feels really good, we are gonna be in very good shape. So that being said, we need to do a couple more things to make sure it's ready for the test day. We've got a bit of time before the test day, so we do our seats and harnesses, just all that oddball stuff to make sure mechanically it's there. Now, we're not gonna worry about the body right this second, because ideally we're gonna test it without most of the body, just the inner fender stuff, so it doesn't get, you know, dirt sprayed everywhere. But the reason for that is just it's way easier to work on without any body panels on it. You know, we can get to stuff more easily, we can spot stuff more easily, we can see if a line back there is leaking much more easily than if we're trying to lean over a fender here. So the body's really gonna be last. Ideally, we'll test the car and then do the body. So I'm gonna quit jibber jabbering, we're gonna get to it. So the first project I wanted to start on was getting this grip tape installed on our pedal box false 4. So I've been waiting for this to come in for a while. I wanted to get some sort of cool pattern. This wasn't really necessarily exactly what I wanted, but it was what I could get on Amazon that had some sort of flair to it. I just wanted a little bit of flash with this grip tape. It's just kind of a cool excuse to buy some cool skateboard grip tape when I don't skateboard or have a skateboard. So we got the first piece cut out. Now we put a piece down there as well so that when you're getting in and out of the car, you have some grip. You're not on a slick painted surface. And then the main place we need it is on the physical pedal box heel plate, essentially, where our feet are gonna rest. So we got the main shape cut out, got it stuck on, and then trimmed around the edges so that we get a nice clean cut. And with that all said and done, it came out pretty nice. I don't know if it's a little too much for me, but for now, it'll work and it'll do the job for sure. So the next thing that I wanted to get done was installing our LED work lights, you could call them. So I left myself some wiring in a bunch of different places with its own circuit for the interior lights. So that way we could have some in the front, in the engine bay, in the middle, inside the cabin, and then in the back by the fuel cell and the radiator. So all I really had to do was put a connector on, run a ground wire, and then connect to the LED light strip. So I used Deutsch connectors just like we used on everything else. It feels kind of funny to have a Deutsch connector on something as simple as some LED lights, but consistency. Now we have the same type of connector for just about everything. So we got the first set wired up. It was a little disappointing, but I'm hoping that once we get the rest of them on, it'll kind of come together better. The brightness of all of them will look a little more uniform and a little brighter than it was looking just there. So since I had to cut this strip, what I needed to do now was solder new wires on, new leads. Now I've always avoided doing this on these, but it really wasn't too bad. Just soldered a couple nice wires on there, made myself a little pigtail with a little heat shrink and a connector, and we were good to go. So we started getting that one installed in the back. This is really, I would say, the most important one, because at night it's nice to be able to have some light that you can turn on in the car when you're getting in, you're getting belted up. You know, when it's dark and you're in the pits with no lights, it's hard to see. So that was a good one to get done. All right, I got all my lights wired in. Unfortunately, they did not stick well. I had the same problem with the last ones I used on the Miata. I got a different brand this time, and it didn't stick for anything either. Had to zip tie it up here. Had to cloth tape it back here, but hopefully it holds up. I did want to put one more up here. And when I was building the wiring, I was like, oh no, I don't need it. And I didn't leave myself a wire like I did everywhere else. And hindsight, wish I did. But we got them all in, including this back one here. If they stay on, they came out pretty nice, but it didn't seem that bright in the front. I'm hoping with all three it'll be bright. All right, Josue, we're gonna turn the lights off. Let's see. Moment of truth. I'll let your guys' eyes adjust, i.e. the camera. So let's turn that on. Boom. Yeah, those are weak. But I mean, it helps. Like, if we're working on this at night, we can kind of see the fuel pumps. If anything, I can snip these wires right where I soldered them on and put new ones in. I mean, overall, it looks pretty cool if you take kind of a step back and look at it. So sweet. Just one of those little projects. Been on my to-do list for a while. I got tired of the wire just hanging out there by itself. So, got it done. Josue got our fender arches cut. So we cut basically this whole portion out because that's where the fenders obviously goes. Normally that would be essentially your inner fender, but we're doing over fenders, so that would get in the way of the tire. Plus we wanted to just minimize it. He's working on getting these in. We had got the windshield put back in before we went to the dyno, so just putting all the trim pieces back in. The grip tape came out good. I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. Just a small subtle hint of flare. I like stuff like really clean interiors and then a little flare, which this will be really clean once everything's painted and the dash is in here. You won't see any of the wiring. It'll be nice. I'm looking forward to that. We'll probably work on that here soon. But beforehand, I really want to change the rear gear in this thing. So it just came with a basic set of gears and basically either made third too long for the skid pad. So I went with the longer ratio that made second long enough to be all right for the skid pad because that's where we're going to be testing this car. The problem is that makes first very, very long, which with the clutch we have and everything, it makes the car very difficult to putt around. And it still doesn't give us, I think, a long enough second gear. We need to bump it up. Now, we didn't have any other gear sets, but fortunately, a really nice guy named David Waxman hit me up and was like, hey, I've got a bunch of leftover quick change gears that I don't need anymore. Do you want them? And I was like, yes, that would be perfect. So I got myself a case. I got the drain pan. We're all set up, ready to go. We're quick change professionals now. No, but it's super exciting. So we now have 8 gears. That's huge because these things are like $100 to $150 a pair. And we're not gonna really have any idea what gears we want for the car for different situations until we drive it. And driving it on just one gear set's not gonna really tell us that. So even if none of these worked, at a minimum, they would teach us what we needed for the car, what would work better. But we do have a pretty decent range here. So what we're gonna do is switch them to set 17. So that'll give us 55 in first, 72 in second, 96 in third, and 115 in fourth. So 96 is probably gonna be about perfect for the skid pad, and 115 would be a little high, but good, nice long gear for the oval. And that brings our first from 68 to 55, which will make the car easier to putt around the pits. That's why I made this little chart. We'll make something nicer, but just to get us by for now. So this is the pair of gears we're gonna use. See if it truly is a quick change. So the way these diffs work is they have 2 gears in the back case here. And the cool thing is each set of gears is essentially 2 ratios. If you put, the big gear on the top versus the bottom or flip them, it changes it from a high to a low ratio. Now it's a little tricky because, this is our first quick change and it's upside down because it's a Corvette chassis. So trying to make sure you put which gear the right way is really important because if you flip them, especially the taller or shorter, your ratio is going to be all off. But these basically use that gear reduction for you to change the overall rear end ratio. So we get those swapped out pretty easy, pretty quick, as the name implies. Fill it up with fluid and we're done. Easy as that. All right, well, before we do anything else, I'm really curious to see what this thing weighs. I've been curious for a while all throughout the build process, but now that it's a functioning, running, driving car, just without body panels, we dug the scales out of the container and we're gonna weigh it. So we'll toss as much of the stuff that's gonna go in here as we can, but really all that's left is the passenger seat, the seat harnesses, and body panels. It's a functioning car. It's not a roller at this point. So taking the weight of a car before it's done is always kind of silly, but it does give you an idea of where you're at. And if you need a little motivation to shave some weight, or you're on the right track, it'll let you know that. So we wanted to get as many things on this car as possible and roughly where they're gonna go. We wanna see kind of where we're at with weight balance. So if there's anything else that we can shift or move around, now is really the time to do it. But this is a big moment. You know, weight is a huge factor. It has an effect on everything, not just power to weight, but drivetrain longevity, all of those things. So I'm really hopeful here. All right, well, it took a little finagling because this thing was dead from sitting in the container for the last year. They had to boot up like 4 times, but we got it working. We got it zeroed. All right, lower her down this way. Let me put it in gear, actually. Lower her down. Mine rolled up until it's down. I just don't want you peeking. Whoa! That's pretty good. That's a good whoa, dude. That is a good whoa. Holy shoot. Dog. That means at its base, it's a little over 200 pounds heavier than the Miata, plus, say, 40, 50 pounds.
Can you see it? The glare?
Yeah, no, I'm looking. There we go. 2766. Let's see our percentages. So 54 on the nose. Damn, that's a little spicy. That's more than we would like. We want this thing to be rear biased, and we only got 46% on the rear. I mean, granted, the hood, we can probably cut up some more. The front's not really gonna get any lighter though. The rear is actually the one that's gonna get lighter when we cut up the hatch and take the Lexan window out. I mean, hey, it's part of it with a turbo LS in the front. It's not terrible, don't get me wrong, but it's not. The Miata's 52. The Miata actually might be 54 on the nose. I have to look up the picture of the weights. But yeah, wow, that's pretty impressive. Let's see what it is with me in it. You wanna hold the camera this way? What do we got?
2975. 50, hold on. 50.
Go to partial percentage.
Partial. Front's 52.8, rear's 47.1.
Okay, so it's better.
Little left bias now.
Yeah, we did split the batteries, which we didn't intend to do. Hey, if we can come in under 3,000 all said and done, like, I would be stoked on that. 3,000 with me in it, because we could probably take 10 to 15 pounds out of this trunk, out of this hatch. Or more than that, with the glass, we could probably take most of the weight out of this glass. And then the body panels don't weigh much. I don't think it's even 30 pounds in body panels, because they're fiberglass, you know? So let's say we take 30 out of this and we add 30 there, we're at the same sub 3,000 pounds. That's just enough weight to be pro spec legal, which it's not going to be pro spec legal, but that's pretty good. You know, you think about all those pro spec cars weigh what this is going to weigh.
Impressive.
That's sick. All right, we're going to take the hatch, roof, and hood off just to see how much weight that saves us. Because again, those would be very easy parts, obviously expensive, but to get some HGK carbon stuff, we can just swap them on. We don't have to do anything crazy. So I'm kind of curious. Let's see.
Is it that one? The one that had long
Yeah. This thing. See, that's 100 pounds, right? Because it was 2766. So let's see what it's at with me in it now.
Yeah, that was
But now,
2077.
ooh, you'll be 2,900, boy.
Yeah, so 100 pounds.
Yeah.
Where?
Dude, that shit's heavy. Those are like the heaviest parts of the car. If we did like all carbon cut more body, we could probably shave 100 plus. Because this rear bumper is heavy as hell too. All right, well, weight-wise, super happy. All said and done, once we trim the hatch, get the Lexan in it, you know, get rid of that heavy rear window, and then we have the quarters on and the front fenders on, I think we should be just under 3,000 pounds with me in it as is, which is huge. That is way better than I was expecting. And we can shave another 80 pounds off that instantly with the carbon stuff from HGK. That stuff all totals 20 pounds versus the 100 pounds of the stock stuff. So that is huge. That is super exciting news. I was worried this thing was going to be a bit of a pig because we tried to make it light, right, in places, but also, you know, we heat sleeved every single line, which that stuff adds a lot of weight. It adds up over time, but I care more about durability than weight. That being said, a whole lot of jibber jabber. We need to get back to work. So we've redone our list here. This is the first time where the list is actually not longer or as long as before. So one thing that absolutely needs to be done before testing is we need to have our trans tunnel sealed up. Now these plates are just mocked up in here. They were bare metal, but we live in Florida. There's a lot of humidity. They completely rusted. So I want to get these painted before I put the sealing stuff on, because obviously it's going to be difficult to paint over all of that stuff. So this has just been a hang up for us, needing to paint these. And we want to paint them to match the chassis color, which means we've got to paint them with the paint gun, which means we want to make sure we have every last thing that we want to paint ready to go and paint it all at the same time, so we don't have to do that whole setup multiple times. So, you know, it's just one of those things where you end up getting put off. So I get all of that stuff out and I start cleaning it up, getting it down to bare metal. It's obviously been rusting and sitting in the Florida humidity for a while, so there's a lot of surface rust built up, but it cleans up nice and we're ready to paint it if Florida will ever let us. The Florida weather has not been cooperating lately. It has been raining every single day, so we decided to jump onto another project, and that is getting the dash final installed. Now, we trimmed this thing originally a couple months back, but we just couldn't get it to fit quite right, and we kind of took a break from it. We weren't ready to mount it anyway, but this time, it's time to get it in. It's kind of do or die. We need to get this thing done. So we're trying to trim it and fit it as best we can, but it's difficult because we don't really have any frame of reference. You know, there's no other interior pieces in the car, so trying to get it to fit right and know what it's supposed to fit like is tricky, but we took our time, we got it fitting decent, and then I moved on to making the mounts. So I have had an idea for these mounts since the beginning. I wasn't sure if it was going to work, but I'm hopeful that it will, because this would make our lives really easy. This is going to make the dash basically quick release. So what we're doing is welding some nuts on the end of some tubes, some rods, and what we're going to do is put the quick latch end in there, weld those to the cage, and then in theory we should be able to just slide the dash in and it latch into those quick latches. So as I was getting the rods done, Josue started working on getting the quick latches mounted into the dash itself. It's always tricky when you don't have quite the right size hole saw bit. I usually err on the side of going with a little bit too small of diameter and then opening it up a little bit with a burr if I have to, just so everything fits tight. We want those quick latches to be in there nice and snug. So with that done, we basically put the rods into the quick latches, put the dash back in the car, marked where they needed to go, marked how long we needed the rods to be, pulled them out, cut them down, clean up the cage where we need to weld them to, put them back in the dash, put the dash back in, and then we wanted to tack them in the car with the dash in place, so we made sure we got the misalignment right and everything was good and everything was gonna work. And once they were all tacked in, we could pull the dash back out and then finish weld them out. And with that, I mean, we officially have a mounted dash. This thing's been hanging over my head for a while. I'm glad to have it done. All right, well, the dash is officially installed. Really nice to see a windshield in this car and see through the windshield and see a dash. It just makes it feel so much more complete. It is super, super rigid in there. Shouldn't flop around on us at all. I was curious how this would go. I was hoping my idea to do it this way would work, but I wasn't sure. So I'm really pleased that it all kind of panned out the way it did, because it came out about as good as I could have hoped. So we've got the digital dash tucked back a little bit more. Still close enough to where I can see it, but it kind of fills in the gauge bezel area, makes that look nice. We got the USB bulkhead in. Those are super, super nifty. It's a lot easier than trying to tuck a cord out of the way and then drag it back out to get to it. You just have a cord stashed in one of our little pocket things, grab it out, plug it in, and you're ready to go. So again, very, very satisfying project. Just seeing it complete with a dash in it. What a world of difference. So I'm still pretty set on not mounting anything else on the dash or anything but that USB bulkhead. It's just more stuff to remove, and I think it looks way better like this. You know, if I had the time to, let's say, recess the keypad in there and have it, you know, flush with the face of the dash, I think that would look nice, but I don't want to have anything just stuck on top of it. So I'm gonna leave it for now, but we do have two things we need to mount that you could easily put on the dash, but I think I'm gonna try to make a separate mount for them to stick to my plan. So we need to mount our dial boost. So we've got this, I think it's a 10 or 12 position switch, but we're gonna use this to adjust our boost levels. So we have a button, and then wherever this is located is what's going to change the amount of boost the boost controller adds. So we have pretty infinite adjustment on how much boost we can run. This will be nice. You know, switching from one track to the other, I can just turn the dial. I don't have to go in the tune and change the bass duty cycle, and it's just gonna make our lives a little bit simpler. On top of that, we have the controller for our chill out system, which we still have currently in the LS Miata. It'll probably be in this car most of the time. I don't use it all that often at fun events in the LS Miata, but it'll be nice to be able to switch it back to that car, you know, in a matter of minutes in case we need it. So that's why I got a separate controller, so I didn't have to steal the controller out of this car. So moral of the story, moral of the jibber jabber is we need to build some sort of little mount to go kind of in front of the shifter area to house both of these things. So we started getting everything unboxed, getting it set side by side, getting an idea of the distance we wanted between each thing and what that meant for how wide we needed to make the overall piece. So we're gonna start, as we usually do, with some CAD, a cardboard aided design, a template. We're gonna make a little template. So I made a box on the cardboard. It's tough when you don't have any straight lines to compare to get a good angle and get a good straight edge. So I did that first, then cut out my angles, and I'm deciding to make this a little different than the similar piece I made for my keypad. I'm gonna make the front and sides out of one piece and then the bottom out of a secondary piece. I think this will look cleaner and it'll be a little bit easier. So messed around a little bit with the bottom angle, which is gonna basically determine how much it's tilted back, which is important. We want it to have the right amount of tilt, but not too much tilt. And then we went ahead and cut it out of some aluminum. We got a nice thick sheet here. We're gonna get this thing cleaned up on the grinder, get all the edges off it, and we had to do a little finesse work to get the angles to match right. I kind of did them with a quickness, and they weren't as precise as I wanted them to be, but nothing the grinder can't fix. So with them all ground down, all of that done, it's time to take it to the Swag Off-Road press brake, get them bent, and then we just need to make a little bottom piece to weld in there. So we cut out some scrap. We tried to use scrap for this whole thing. I hate breaking out a whole sheet of aluminum or steel for some small piece that I'm making, so we made good use of the scraps we had. We got the pieces we needed. Now we just need to get our holes for both the cord for the chill out controller and the actual knob itself, obviously, for the boost control solenoid, which is a little precise. It has a little detent that holds it in place. So we needed to get that marked and get that in place so that way our sticker would all line up and 0 would be at the top and we'd know where the thing was pointing. I have a similar setup in my truck with a different dial and I have no idea where it is. I have to basically turn it back to 0 every time to figure out how many clicks I'm on, and I didn't want that with this car. I wanted to be able to get in there, look at it, and see, okay, you know, we're at 6 clicks, that should be 850 wheel, or whatever it translates to. So we got it all welded up, and then we had to pull the dash out, which is always a bummer when you finish a project and you think you're done with something, and then you got to pull it back apart, but luckily we made it easy, so it came out nice and easy. We got our holes marked, we got our rib nuts in, and we let the paint dry for not nearly enough time, and then went ahead and assembled our little box here with the chill out controller and the boost control solenoid. Got our sticker on, got our nut on, got all of that done, and then went ahead and tossed it back in the car, tossed the dash back in, getting good testing in to see what it's like to remove and install this dash, and we're done with that at least. All right, check it out. Dial boost and chill out system controller mounted. Very, very happy with that. That's the perfect spot. It looks a little weird that we've got like the one and then the other, but I like it. You can see how I took a different approach. This one, I bent the bottom and top piece and then made side pieces, but you can't bend over 90 in the brake, so I had to bend it by hammer. This one, I did the front piece and then just a little piece at the bottom. This is definitely the better way to do it. But yeah, so you see 0 boost. So basically our boost control is out of the gate, just start the car up, wastegate springs. Then I click boost, that turns the boost control solenoid on, and then I can adjust this. So if it's a 0, it won't add any boost, and I can add a little bit, can add a lot of it, and turn it up to 11 if I want to. So we can set up also what 11 is. So we could have it set to where 11 was, you know, the 15 pounds that made 1100. So we don't go over, you know, what we know it can handle for sure. Well, that's pretty nifty, you know. Say we wanted 800, we'd probably be around 3 or 4. You know, we want 950, probably 8, 9. And then we want 1100, turn it up to 11. Oh, sweet. All right, so I still gotta wire this in. Just easy peasy, wire it to the Holly. Obviously we need to put our chill out setup in, but we got our connector there. The chill out system's gonna go down there in the floor. We're gonna have a duct running up to the window area. But yeah, whew, interior is coming along. We just need to paint these things, but we had a little bit of a break today from the rain where I could have knocked it out, but Josue wasn't here today. And that's really one of those jobs where it'd be ideal to have 2 people. So we got a little bit of time left. Hopefully one of these next few days we have a dry day and we can paint this stuff. So we're going testing in just a few days. So we definitely need to get ready. We got to get harnesses in. We got just a little bit to do as far as just buttoning up the car to be driftable. And then it's time to test it. Hopefully it goes well. I'm glad I didn't push the date up because there were more things than I thought of that I really should have done before we go drive this thing on track. So it kind of worked out. We should have, you know, just enough time. like always run it to the last minute. So anyway, I hope to see you guys for all of that. But for now, that is gonna be it. So thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I hope to see you next time. As I said before. All right, goodbye.